Okay, so we're about to wrap up this build. Obviously I need to finish putting the graphics on and stuff before the reveal. But I want to give you all the miscellaneous tips that I kind of missed throughout the way or just don't really fall into a category. None of these are all, some of them are good, some of them are optional. It just depends what you're doing. So, if you watched my seat installation video, we bent the pan. We heated the pan and we bent it forward. So if you can see this here, this is the normal mount position of the gas tank. I have the hole lined up right now. And you can see the seat is actually riding up on the higher part of the tank. So what I typically do with my builds, I didn't have to do it on the hybrid, but my other R was the same way. What I actually do, you know, the gap, we're gonna have a gap right here because it's hitting. So what I do is I actually slide the tank forward. I drill new holes in the side mount brackets, and be careful doing it. It's best to do it on a drill press so you can get it, you know, right on. But I basically move it up probably, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch. And the front mount should clear the handlebar rail here. If it doesn't, then sometimes certain frames I have to grind it down. So I just put that front gas tank bracket on the wheel and grind it down a little bit. But now you can see what happens is that seat can now fit back into the groove. And I think a lot of what, you know, this is actually an 89 NOS seat foam, but the Foreworks cover and the foam adds a little bit to it. So what I'm probably going to do here, you're never going to get the gap completely gone. It's just not going to happen, because you got the rubber grommets underneath hitting the tank, and you've got other stuff going on. But you can keep it closed up. You know, you're not having that way tipped back big gap that's in there. So by moving the tank forward, you actually get a better fit. And I've been doing that for a while on many builds. You just need a little bit, and then when you sit on it, it fits right down into that pocket. So I'm going to move this tank forward, and then I'm going to reheat the seat a little bit. I've never done it with the seat cover on, but I'm pretty sure I can do it. Just heat it up nice and even. See if I can tip it even. It doesn't have to go very far, just a little bit. If not, then, you know, I'm fine with where it is, because you're never going to get it perfect. So something to think about. I don't do this until I get the seat cover on, the fenders on, and I you know, check the alignment of everything. But if you do find that it's riding up on the higher part of the tank here, you know, just go back a little bit, put the same size hole in it, use a drill press. If you don't have a drill press, I at least use a center punch so you get that where you want it to be. And then, you know, you step it up, use an 1/8 inch, use probably go 1/8 inch, maybe 1/4 inch, and then whatever the last size is. You know, I always like, or if you have a step bit, that works fine too. So that's one thing. Let me take the fenders off. The other thing that I didn't talk about is mounting the bottom braces. So I normally don't do that until the exhaust is on. So the exhaust is on. But typically what you want to do, this, you can't see it here, but it'll slide back and forth. It has a little bit of range of motion. You typically want it over to the right, over towards the exhaust side. And then you just put your brackets that Meyer supplies on there, see where they line up, and, you know, mark your spot, drill it out, and bolt them in. If you want, pull them out a little bit farther. It's good if you have 2 people on each side, just so they don't rattle, because I didn't do that with my race bike fenders, and it kind of rattled a little bit. So this one, I'm actually going to try to put a little tension on it, and that'll keep it from rattling. So, you know, but again, I like to see where the exhaust is clearing, and typically you want to push that over towards the exhaust side just to make sure that it has enough space for the exhaust. So if you want to keep your powder nice and fresh, what a lot of people don't know is powder coat is actually plastic. It's not paint, it's not metal, it's plastic. It's, you know, super fine dust, plastic particles, And that's why the electrical charge that they apply works so well, because, you know, the static plastic works well with static. So they apply the negative, they charge the mist, the powder, and then when it sprays on, it sticks to that negative charge, and then they bake it, right? They bake it at 400 degrees or whatever it is. So, because it's plastic, it's going to wear. And I spent $600 on powdering this thing. So you know, obviously it's going to get chipped up, it's going to get marked up, there's nothing you can do about it. But there's certain things you can do in certain wear places. Anything that rubs, anything that touches the powder, it doesn't matter if it's metal, plastic, rubber, whatever, eventually it's going to wear that powder away. It's just the way it is, because it's plastic, it's going to rub it in. So what I use is helicopter tape, and you can get it on Amazon, just search helicopter tape. And it's mainly used, well, it was originally used for helicopter blades, to keep them, you know, because stuff hits it. And, but a lot of guys use it on their mountain bikes, you know, any regular bikes. So I've been testing it out, different grades and stuff. It works pretty well, but it doesn't last forever. Like I'll put a piece right here where my boot rubs, and I just keep an eye on it. If it starts to wear, then I'll replace it. So places like here, you know, I've got a few zip ties for my wiring. What I did is I just cut a strip of that tape. I used the 2-inch tape, wrapped it around, and now wherever I have a zip tie, it's going to take a lot longer to rub through. You can do that pretty much anywhere. You know, if you have a reservoir hose that's touching the frame, whether it's here, down here, or OEM frame, just wrap some of that around it, and it'll definitely help. It'll lengthen, yeah, because no, you spend all this money. Obviously, this is a rider, it's not a garage queen, but I still like to keep it nice. So, you know, just a little tip, the helicopter tape at any rub areas, make sure you go through and test everything. The one thing I noticed was my rear brake line was rubbing the frame, and I knew that was going to rub right through that powder. So rather than putting the tape on there, I actually rotated the line on the master to bring it up and clear it. Another thing is here I noticed with my front brake line, and I don't know why it's doing it on this because it didn't do it before. It'll usually be one side or the other, not both. And that's because of the twist in the braided line. You can never, there's always going to be some weird twist on one side. It's just the way it is. So you can see there's I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of I got slack here, I got a bow here. So what's happening is when I turn all the way to the right, it's pulling the line down the guide, and then when I turn all the way the other way, it's actually buckling it and it's rubbing the tire. So obviously that's not good because that's going to rub through the line. Probably won't hurt the braid itself, but it's going to rub through the coating, and you know, just not something I want. So I need to figure out how to, because these brake line clamps for the A-arms, there's enough clearance in there to keep, they never lock down. So what I'm trying to do is come up with something else, and I actually came up with these earlier. I cut them out of poly for my dual brake lines to keep them nice and clean. And then I'm trying to come up with something for the bottom here to keep them away from the stem and anchored to the frame, because my other stem is a mess from the lines rubbing it. It'll turn it black, and it's just from the plastic coating. Nothing, you know, it's one of those things. So I'm trying to keep a little bit of cleaner line management, keep things off the powder, keep things anchored nice and tight, and be another product. I'll be making these dual line clamps. What else? So we talked about hairpins for all your cotter pin replacements. I use those wherever. On this one, I was able to use them everywhere, all up front. Tie rod ends, kingpin, everything. Let's see. Going on the controls. Oh, Headstay. Good one to talk about. So not every motor uses a headstay. You'll get even some Pumas, some big bores. They don't have, the head doesn't have the mount. And my PC2000 doesn't have the mount. So I talked to Lauren Duncan about it, and he said in their testing, the Headstay was the least effective of all the mounts. Now, on my other frame, LSR is a bit inconsistent with their frames. It doesn't have the upper motor mount in the rear. So I was a bit concerned because then I would only be running with 3 mounts. There's the lower, the bottom, and then the front. And I thought for a 363 that was a little bit, or actually it wasn't when I put my 363 in, it was when I had my PC2000 and I was still a little bit concerned. So Duncan does sell a head, their PC2000 head with a mount, so I ended up getting it, putting it on. But the one thing that Lauren stressed to me was that you have to make sure that cylinder is not being pressed one side or another. So that means when you put your headstay in, whether it's an OEM frame or an aftermarket frame, make sure that the two mounts, the 2 prongs that go onto the head mount are centered and pretty loose in there. If you have to wedge it down in and it's a lot of pressure on one side, that's not good. And LSR in some of their later frames, they actually removed the rear upper motor mounts because they were cracking. And you know, chromoly actually flexes more than mild steel. So when this whole frame is designed to flex a little bit. And what was happening was if the headstays weren't centered correctly and weren't put on properly, it was actually pulling the cylinder off. It was breaking stud. It was, you know, messing it up. So I make sure even on my race bike, when I put the headstay on, it had too much tension on one side. So I took the headstay, put it on the grinder, you know, shaved off one side, and then I just shimmed the other side with a washer just to get it centered properly. And I never had an issue with it. But you know, just something to keep in mind. Make sure there's no extra pressure one way or another on that cylinder in the head. I think that was about it. You know, just some little tips. I don't think there's anything else. You know, as far as the line clamps on the A-arms, it's up to you if you want to use 1 or 2. Some bikes I use 2. This one I had 1. But now that I'm seeing I'm having this issue, I may have to get another set just to kind of keep it in place, or I'll see what I come up with. I did design some frame clamps for this, but the problem is with the HDP on the clear coat, I couldn't get enough grip. It was just rotating and sliding, not like an aluminum where it would clamp down and bite it. So I got to play around with that a little bit more. But I think that's about it. So this one's about ready to go. You know, wrap some things up, finish the graphics, and I am waiting on a skid plate. Oh, that was the other thing I want to talk about. So if you have a ProPeg frame, my powder guy messed up this time. Normally I tell him only powder out about 1.5 inches and almost nothing on the front. The issue is, if you have an 1 1/8" OD tube here, and you have an 1 1/8" ID Nerf bar, and then you add 5 to 10 thousandths of powder, well, it becomes a very tight fit. And I messed up when I put my Wrath Nerf bars on the race bike. I left the powder on the pegs, and I had to beat the hell out of them to get them on, and I had to beat them even worse to get them off. So what I'm going to do is, I know where those pegs come to and how much space I have. I already have these marked. So I'm going to probably get the Dremel or a grinder wheel or something and just go around and remove that powder to that point. The fronts actually almost need to be no powder on them. And that'll save you a lot of headaches because it's tough to beat off. That didn't come out right. It's tough to whack the Nerf bars and get them off because they have the net mounts. So you don't want to bend those, and there's not a lot of places to hit. So it was tedious, time consuming, but I did get them off. So lesson learned there. I think that's about it then. Yeah. That's it for now. So probably the next video you see is going to be the running bike, the walk around, show you what we end up with. I am waiting. Oh yeah, I'm waiting for my my skid from Glenn Turner. He was waiting on the 3/8 material. So I was going to race this weekend. I could put my other skid on, but I may actually hold out and see race one of my other bikes just to make sure I get this taken out for a test run. I don't really like taking a bike directly out into the field, especially with an MX race, without testing it first, just making sure everything's solid. You know, whenever you first build a bike, make sure after the first ride, whether it's an hour or 2 hours, go back through, check all your bolts, make sure everything's tight, because stuff, you know, especially with the 2 strokes, there's a lot of vibration. So, you know, make sure everything is good, especially with your front end. Check your swing arm, your pivot bolt. I've had a bunch of issues with the nut coming off. I've had it break cotter pins. I've tried Norlock washers. I've tried Castle nuts. I've tried lock wash, nylocks, everything. For some reason, with this swing arm, when it was on my race bike, it just kept turning it. I don't understand why. Never had that issue before. So I'm going to grease the hell out of this, and hopefully on this build it performs better. I don't know. It's kind of mind-boggling. But yeah, but even like here, I know my throttle cable is going to rub the frame, so I wrapped it with tape, and hopefully that'll eliminate some stuff, some powder wear. So hardline, you know, I recommend, especially after a new build, a new motor build, get yourself an hour meter, and the RPM is nice, because sometimes mine, if it idles high, I can just look right here and lower that, adjust my tuning. When you put on your front fenders, what I do, make sure your shrouds are on, and I adjust my brackets while the fenders are mounted. And I like to make sure that the fenders aren't resting right on the radiator. Lift them up just a little bit, make sure everything is free and clear. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just something I do. Again, I like to keep everything where it should be and not vibrating or not rubbing on something else. So, all right, that's it. So I'm excited to get this thing finished up, and it's definitely an experience filming this versus just building it. I could have had it built in the weekend, but filming it, I can only do it in the evenings, and it definitely takes a bit of time. So I hope you guys get some benefit out of these videos. You know, it's not going to be anything groundbreaking to some of the older guys, but some of you newer guys that are getting into 250Rs or any quad really. A lot of these principles apply. Obviously, if you're going to have a YFZ, EFI, or some other crazy bike, it's going to be different. But I will be redoing the 450 soon, so I'll see how things go. The response I get from these videos, I may end up doing, shooting that one as well. I'm not going to shoot my rebuild of the race bike because that's basically the same as this, so we're not going to do that one. But as I get new products in, as I change things up, as I test new stuff out, I'll do videos and I'll keep you guys in the loop. I've got some other videos I'm going to do already. So if you like what you see, please subscribe and tell your friends. Let's keep things going. Let's keep this sport alive. Sport quads rule. All right, guys. See ya.